I won't bite. Leo and Val are gun shy because I was biting people down in the Capitol meeting, so.
Sure you are.
Hey, we all.
So let's kick it off. So wow, it's it's not often that you see everyone in IT in one building, aside from the holiday party. So so it's super nice to see everyone. Thanks for joining, and obviously we have a very special guest with us today, and this is her first Bits-N-Bytes. So she was asking me before, she's like, what am I expecting? Are we just gonna talk casual? I'm like, yeah, don't worry, we're gonna.
Is he setting me up?
That's what he does.
No, I would never. But so anyway, so without further ado, someone who needs really no introduction. She's been with us, NYP, for, I'll just say, over a lot of years. And she is our leader. She is our CIO. She is Miss Aurelia Boyer. So Aurelia, thanks for being here today. It's really a pleasure for myself, and I'm sure everyone, to have you as a guest. So let's first start off. I know you're a huge Homeland fan. Are you Homeland?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Have you been watching?
Yep, I'm up to date.
What do you think about the season so far?
The season, that's interesting. I don't know that
Like last season, I thought it was really good. This season, any Homeland fans? Yeah. No, it's a good show. I actually like it a little more than Walking Dead. I mean, I know Walking Dead is good too.
Well, I think that that she's a little mixed up, and so I couldn't decide last week. I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. Whether she was being manipulative when she went between those two men.
Oh.
So she's using two guys, and it wasn't right.
Right.
She hugged the one guy, right? So you have the guy who got shot. What's his name? Quinn.
Quinn. Right. Oh yes.
Quinn, which you think she's been in love with, or he's been in love with her. Let's put it that way, for season after season.
Right.
And now he's injured because of her. And then she's using the other guy who she was sort of living with because she had left Quinn to help her deal with Quinn, and she's hugging him. So I don't know. She was getting a little sneaky for me. That's what I thought last week.
That's true. I mean, she's not healthy up there. So
That's true too. Hopefully she's on her meds.
actually, she I don't want to ruin it, but she's not, right? But yeah, no, great show. So I just want to talk a little bit about your career at NYP. I know you started as a nurse, right?
Well, I started at NYP. I've been in this department for 22 years.
Wow.
So, other senior vice presidents, they've all been in one department, the other department, they moved around. I have been in this department the entire 22 years. I started on that second floor in one of those offices. I don't know how many spots they've moved me to over the years, but it's a lot of spots. Uptown, downtown, the 11th floor, back there, up here. That's why when Anita and I started throwing stuff away, because I never threw anything away, we just moved it. We moved it. So now I finally threw it away. So 22 years, and I started as a manager. A manager. So There's a lot of ways to grow in a big organization like this, so you should all take heart that I did that.
So how big was IT back then?
Ooh, geez, where's Dominic? I need one of my graphs.
Oh, he's right
Much
there.
smaller, much
Much smaller.
Is it this
So
room?
it's-
less than 200, I think.
You think that's small?
167.
Yeah.
Well, so and I will tell you, when I started here, and I was talking to Dom about this recently, this is what you would have called a mainframe shop. Everything ran on the mainframe. Everything. Every year, we were just working on the capital budget. Every year, the majority of the capital went to buy, what?
MIPS.
MIPS. We bought MIPS. When I'm sitting there
Wait,
trying.
is that the coffee? The coffee drops?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nips.
We always, that mainframe was,
per second.
yeah, hoggy, we had to increase the processors, increase the processors, and I was sitting here trying to get some clinical systems installed, and I'm going, we gotta stop buying MIPS, they're killing us. It's too expensive. IBM loved us, right? Boy, the IBM rep lived here because we bought a lot of IBM MIPS every single year. So that's how far things have gone. Yesterday, I know any of the lab team are here, I went up and saw the new automated lab up at 168th Street. You would not believe how much of what has always been manual lab work is now done in a robotic machine. It's like, oh my God, and all I could think about was, and I see my radiology team, when I started this work, x-rays were on film. None of this automation on the clinical side, not one zip of it really was here. Even the pharmacy was on the mainframe. The pharmacy was on the mainframe, and there weren't all those instruments and interfaces and things attached to it. It was just the standalone pharmacy system. The radiology system was under the department head's desk with no support
Where's
from
Jennings? Where's Jennings?
no support from the IT department at all. So we were a lot smaller because none of that was going on.
Yeah.
Right? And we had dumb terminals out there when I started. So very different environment. It's kind of scary how different it is.
So you touched a little bit on, you've been at the hospital for 22 years, CIO since 2003, I believe.
Something like that.
I know, because, so congratulations on the interview that you just recently had with Becker.
That
So-
headline was a little,
Yeah.
I was like, that's not what I said.
So throughout those 10 years as CIO, and with technology just like rapidly evolving, how have you seen the role of the CIO evolve from 2003 and up until now? I mean, even like 3 years ago, I'm sure it's evolved to certain responsibilities where things like security is now on the forefront, innovation, things you didn't really worry about as much back then.
Well, I think that if you talk to most hospital CIOs, the biggest difference is it's not about the hospital anymore. And so it's real, and that's really stressful, to tell you the truth. It's kind of like, wait a minute, who signed up for all these other places and all this doctor's office stuff? And it's kind of like really overwhelming. But the point when I was talking to the Becker's guy, I was saying, so some of you who know me, one of my fierce things is politics. So I have very strong political opinions. I will sometimes try to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. But I will watch all the debates. I watch them all. I watch the Democratic debate. I watch the Republican debate. Sometimes my head's exploding, but I'm in there watching it. And I was struck as I watched the debates and these candidates, some of whom, excuse my editorial comment, seem to be completely unprepared to be president of the United States, right? You're going, holy crap. But I started to think, well, what is what is it about? What it is about? It's really about leadership, right? Because as much as I admire Hillary's experience in many, many areas of government, some of the other candidates have nothing even close to that. You can't really know all those things, right? Is the president really a military expert? Is the president really a health and human service expert? I mean, talk about doing a budget, holy moly, you know. So it's really not about that you know how to do every one of those things, but you know how to lead all of these people. And so one of the things that I feel more strongly at the end of my career is it's turned into leadership for me. But when I started as a manager, and I was doing and I was doing and I was doing, and like all of you do, right? And that's satisfying. And so at some point I started saying, well, I'm not doing anything, right? I go to meetings. Sometimes that's not very satisfying, let me assure you. But it's really about being a leader and getting what I can out of each of you and your teams who are the experts in each of those areas. So that's why I was talking about being the president is being a leader, being the CIO is really about trying to lead. And so I think that's really what I've learned and felt very specifically as I've been getting ready to retire.
That's a great answer. Is there something that, in hindsight, you know, that you you felt like maybe you could have done things differently?
What? Gee, I don't really think like that very often. I'd say in general, I'm going to admit something to you that if I was staying, I probably wouldn't tell you. I have a bit of a nature to procrastinate. And I always regret that I've done that, because when I've done it, it was like, okay, now it's done, it's over. What did I delay it so long for? And so I think every time I procrastinate, it's not the best thing. And so I wish I could just get rid of that. In fact, that is my single New Year's resolution every single year. Not, I will lose weight, but I will stop procrastinating.
Have you been getting better?
I'm better. And it ebbs and flows. Like I'll go through a period where I'm really good, and then I can fall back a little.
So on the flip side, what are you most proud of in your 22 or even 10-year career?
Well, I think it's really been about not giving up. And so I have been stopped so many times, and you just don't let it get you. You just get up and you keep going. One day I reached out to Joe Hayes for my retirement, because many of you don't know, but when I first started, the then Chief Operating Officer of New York Hospital before the merger was a woman named Kathy Martin. People had great respect for her. In fact, the tagline about Kathy was, if she ran for president, every one of the people in the hospital would vote for her. That's how popular she was at that point in time. And Kathy said to me, you need to have a white coat next to you. And this kind of goes back to Gardner Wright and all kinds of other things that I won't go into because I'll be talking forever. But Joe and I started really working on getting the clinical system up the first time. And so when we put the first order entry system up, you think this one's bad? You should have seen the first one. It was really bad. But we were going to do it, and we put it up on a nursing unit, and it didn't fly. And Joe turned to me and said, they threw us off the beach. It was like, boom, we were done, we were out of there. But he said, but we're gonna do it, we're gonna try. And so we came back. And so I think every time you have a defeat, and you should know I was defeated many times. I was screamed at, I was abused by physicians in this organization. I have more arrows in my back than I could possibly pull out. But you just keep going because you know you're doing the right thing. So that's the most important thing. So I always believe I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this to make healthcare better, and I never give up.
And obviously you know that she's been doing the right thing, because who knows what CIO stands for?
Career is over.
Career is over. And she's had a over 10-year career as a CIO, and that's unheard of nowadays. And
When I reach 2 years, people in the industry, not people in the hospital, in the industry say, wow, 2 years, you're over average now. It's like that they really don't expect you to last. It's getting better, I think, but back then it was really bad.
so what are you going to miss the most about coming to work every day?
Well, first of all, the coming to work is not my favorite part of the day.
Other than the little actually coming.
Thank God it's daylight in the morning again. I hate getting up in the dark. Well, I'm gonna miss you guys. That's all I'm gonna miss is working with my team, the ones who are directly reported to me. When I work with you in your individual groups, that's what I'm gonna miss, and that's all I'm gonna miss.
So how are you gonna fill that time? Yourself for golf. We know you're an avid golfer and a huge Yankee fan. Go Mets.
There's always next year.
Right. So we all got next year now, and I was going to change the chalkboard and say we're all waiting for next year now. So, well, my husband's been retired for a number of years, and he wants a playmate, and he's been waiting. And so I'm gonna go play with my husband, and some of it will be golf for sure, because we both play golf, and we actually play pretty even, which is kind of interesting. But sometimes he started getting a little better than me. I started getting a little like, wait a minute, but then one of us falls back and the other one comes back. So so far we're staying even, and now my golf progression is sort of haphazard based on what I can get to time to do. So I have in my mind that a very methodical program of how I'm going to improve each part of my game so that it will come together in a way it hasn't. So that's going to take a fair bit of my time.
Do you have a favorite player? A favorite golf player?
Well, I have been a really big Tiger fan, and I'm really sorry that I think his seal work did him in. And lately I have been, the Australian guy, Jason Day has been the guy I've been cheering for lately. I'm not, I don't have anything against Jordan Spieth, but he doesn't do anything for me. He's kind of, and Rory, I don't have anything for Rory, so Jason's my guy right now.
Do you have a favorite course?
Course? Oh, course? Oh. Any golf course.
Any golf.
I love, they're all beautiful. I have played Pebble Beach. It looks just like it looks on TV. It's incredibly beautiful, but I'm not gonna play that every day, so it's gonna cost a lot of money.
Any advice for the incoming CIO?
I probably have a ton of advice for the incoming CIO. Well, one of the things I'm telling him is he's got a good team, and and I've worked with a lot of the directors and the vice presidents about telling your story, because each of these teams has a story to tell, and you need to be able to tell your story. I don't have to tell him that story. You all can do that, but you need to do that so that he can feel the robustness of what's here, because the hospital's going to tell him plenty of things, so you guys really need to fill in this side of the story. And so I'm going to tell him to listen to you, because that's where I really want this to come from, not from me giving them a bunch of PowerPoints about here's our strategy and here's our project plans and here's our budget, but for you to tell your stories. And for you to maintain your relationships. So many of you are directly tied to your users and the other IT teams, and you've got to keep that strong and moving forward.
Great. I know you touched a little bit about how you've grown as a person. Any advice on, aspiring CIOs or aspiring executives? Like, what bit of advice would you give them? Because you came from a nurse, completely non-technical, to a project manager, right? And then you're CIO. So, what advice would you give?
Well, so my advice is, and it's going to sound really corny, but you have to follow what you're passionate about, and what you should do will reveal itself to you, right? So it's not like I knew the day I joined New York Presbyterian Hospital that I wanted to be a CIO. I didn't know that. I knew I had been in a hospital, and then I did a lot of consulting work and other things. And I knew I wanted to be back in the hospital, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. So it would have been feasible that I would have spent a few years in IT, and then I would have gone back to nursing. I could have done that at that point, I don't know. Wasn't that I planned to do that either, but so it kind of comes to you, and I'm always, most of you aren't that young anymore, but when you're really young and people say you're 18 years old, what do you want to be? No. But I mean like 18-year-old young. I don't mean like, like when you're 18 years old and everybody says, what do you want to be? And you got to go to college. You have to decide, am I going to be a doctor or a nurse, or am I going to be an accountant, or what am I going to be? Who the hell knows when you're 18 years old? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so let your life reveal itself to you, because it's great, but you can't drive it all. So don't get so caught up in, I have to be a director at this time, I have to be a vice president at this time, I gotta be here when, and it's not how life works. And don't try to make your life work like that.
Any questions? So, what were your biggest challenges as a CIO? I mean, I know there's tons of them, but like, would you say?
Okay, let's hear some ideas. What do you think my biggest challenge as a CIO is? Come on. You all know it.
Tell a story.
No. What's my challenge? That's a good idea. What's my biggest
Trying to deliver
challenge?
solutions with the little money that you have.
That's a challenge. What's my biggest challenge?
Translation to the clinical.
You're closer.
What did you say?
Translating the power of the.
Come on, what's your biggest challenge every day? Every one of you. The vendors are a walk in the park. Who's more challenging than the vendors? The users. The users. They don't understand what you understand. They want what they want. You've got all these competing priorities. That's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge. So you face user challenges, all of you, and I face it on an up-to-zillion billion level. It's terrible. Sometimes it's just listen to me, please, just listen to me, but it's hard to get them to listen.
So if you were not CIO, what would you want to be doing if you didn't become CIO?
Is a work.
And yeah,
So I have a couple ideas. So when I was young, I'm a nurse because there were not many women doctors back then. So there were not that many options open to me. My mother said, okay, there's this nursing thing and there's this teaching thing. I didn't like either of them, to tell you the truth. I went to nursing school by default, not by, let me assure you, it was never that I felt it was some kind of freaking calling. Not me, not me. So in retrospect, when I look back at what I like, and if I thought the whole world was my oyster back then, I would have thought about being a vet. I love animals, more than people. I would have thought about being a dentist. I think that, you know, in the time that I've grown up, it's like your own business, you know, kind of thing. And I think that I wouldn't have thought how interesting finance would have been, and that I think being a chief financial officer is a good career that I would never have considered. So those are things that I now look back and say, well, maybe I should have thought of that, but like I said, who knows when you're 18 years old.
Do you have any pets?
I've had a cat. I lost my cat this year. As soon as I retire, there will be a new cat, who I've already named.
Would you like to share?
I believe I'm going to call my new cat Blair.
Blair. So, man, I've asked all the questions, so I want to make it, you know, interactive. So, we want to open up the questions to you guys. If you have any questions for Aurelia, I'm going to pass the mic. Whoever has any questions, they want to raise their hands.
Okay, this is your shot.
This is it.
All these years, here you got me.
No hold barred. Anyone? All right.
Who's your favorite Yankee of all time?
Favorite Yankee of
All time. Well, so let me say something about baseball. I grew up in Detroit. I grew up on the Detroit Tigers. And so my childhood baseball stars are all Detroit Tigers. Since I've been in New York, A-Rod is my guy. And, you know, he did damn fine coming back after being out of there for a whole over a year and at his age. So, good for him. But I really grew up in Detroit with Al Kaline would probably be my old-time favorite. I have the signature. It's autographed. Yes.
What's your philosophy on risk and managing risk and mitigating risk?
What do you do? I don't know. Well, tell me.
What's your philosophy?
No, what do you do?
What do you do?
I do?
What's your role?
I'm a software engineer.
Okay. So you found, you guys are getting the honest to God truth today, let me tell you. I hate that subject. I hate the subject of risk. So what do you want to know about risk? Ask that question again. As soon as you said risk, my brain went shoom.
I also hate risk. I hate taking risks. And so I was curious what your philosophy on risk.
Okay.
Taking risks and mitigating risks.
Okay, so I like taking risks. I think being bold is fun, and taking risks. What I don't like is when they start with what are your 5 greatest risks and how are you going to mitigate those risks, and then we all sit around and get into these circular discussions about downtime and what causes downtime and how much should you invest in disaster recovery, and oh my God, it's just a nightmare. But as far as taking risks, so when we first put up, so the very first clinical thing, well, not the very first. One of the early clinical things I put up was an ICU system. So the Allscripts system that we have now is a heritage from the Eclipsis system, which is an heritage from the MTech system, which was an ICU system. And so the ICU physicians wanted this thing desperately. And so we bought one for I think there were 6 ICUs then, but. And I was sitting with the implementation woman from the vendor, and quite frankly, we looked at each other before go live and said, how bad do you think this is gonna be? Because we had no idea. what we were doing. We were so far out there, I called it, we're bare ass naked and let's just go. And so you gotta do things like that, because if you're always safe, you're not gonna know. You're just not gonna know what to do or how to do it. There was no game plan for that. People had barely ever done that. And the people who had done it were doctors that had kind of tinkered it together for their own use. It was very different to buy it from a vendor, bring it in, put it into an ICU with a bunch of users who were like, in the ICUs, they used to have these big graphs they'd hang on the wall, and they would chart the vital signs on these big graphs. And so it would, like, the doctor would walk in the room and the whole wall would kind of give them a picture. And then we said, no, go look at that thing in the computer. It's not on the wall anymore. Oh my God, they were just mad. And they wanted it. They insisted. They told me, if you stop this project, you will never get another job in the world again. And then when we did it, they were like, holy crap, I don't like this. But we survived that one too. So take some risks. It's fun.
So at this point, I just want to pause on the questions for a little bit. We have a little bit of a surprise for Aurelia. So we just wanted to, I don't know if you know, we had a softball team, and we've always had a softball team. And a couple of years ago, NYP had stopped the sport, I guess, funding, but we were able to carry on because of Aurelia. She graciously kept on supporting us, and she actually used her own money to pay for the league for us. So we're really appreciative that we were able to continue to play, and as a little bit of token of appreciation, the league had given us a 20-year plaque that we want to give to you as an appreciation for your continuous support.
But this is for you.
No. I mean, we wouldn't have been there without your support. Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure to do that, and I love when you guys do things for yourselves. And so if I've achieved anything in the last few years, when I started saying, if you have passion about it, do it, right? So when people are like, our orientation stinks, I'm going, I don't have passion about orientation. I've been here 20 years. But some people had passion about it, and they made it better. That is the most fantastic thing. And you guys got passion about playing together as a team, and you're willing to do that and join with each other. I'm happy to do that. And you want to do Bits-N-Bytes, so because everybody always says, if I go out and I say, what would you like to improve? They say, well, we don't know each other well enough. And I go, talk to each other, right? And so you say, let's do Bits-N-Bytes, and let's learn about each other, and let's have lunches and snacks. That's the greatest thing. This is your department. You come, you work here a lot of hours every single week. Make it great. You can make it great. I can facilitate, the new guy can facilitate, but this is your department, and you don't ever forget this is your department. So how'd you do this year? Because I was thinking about asking for more. Not so good?
Let's move on.
It was about playing.
We're recruiting for next season.
Yeah, okay, good.
Carlos is our captain, right? Current captain.
This year we actually did well. We came in second place in the division and
Great.
we made the playoffs. Unfortunately, we got eliminated in the first game, but it was fun. I just want to say one thing. When we picked up the trophy, which we got this year, they awarded us this 20-year participation award, and the first thing that came to my mind is this should really go to Aurelia, because the team wouldn't have existed without her the last few years, and probably even more than that.
Yeah.
So that's.
Thank you so much.
And we still have a couple other things that we wanna.
You guys know I'm
appreciate you.
trying at a moment's notice, and I'm trying to hold it together.
Definitely prepared.
That's good. Oh, you guys are so sweet.
But that's not it.
Oh.
More.
There's more.
No. What are you guys doing?
I don't know, let me see.
It's a new car!
The car's not here, so we can continue. Anyone have any questions, and then we'll get back to the car.
What are your thoughts on how to get more women in IT?
That is an interesting question. So here, let's think about it maybe this way. And boy, you guys are making me think about things I never thought about. I think where we are now in IT, which is a much more creative aspect of IT, I think that can attract more women. I think when you think of IT in a very mechanical, zeros and ones, mathematical way, not that women aren't good at math, I mean, that was always my strong suit, but it tends not to, I think finance has that same problem. Like I said, I never would have thought about finance. So I think in general, that aspect of where IT's going makes it more attractive. I tell you, when I first became CIO and I went to the healthcare CIO meetings, there were very few women there, and there are a lot of women there now. So it has changed in healthcare particularly. And I think even when we go to the Gartner conference now, over the last few years, I've seen that trending a little bit more to having more females there. So I think it's on that road. And you know, when I was a staff nurse, there was one woman doctor in the entire hospital. Not now. Now they're 50% of the doctors, they're 50% of the lawyers, so our time has come. Anything else?
Hi. So when you were growing in your career path, what part of your character, your personality, do you think stood out the most that brought attention to you and your abilities to grow in IT?
In IT.
Yes. Because of what we just spoke
Well,
about with the men.
So certainly when I entered IT, my facility to succeed is around the fact that I always worked in healthcare. I mean, I did every job in the hospital there was to do before I started working in IT. So you think I never saw a lab before? I was the only administrative person in the hospital on weekends. If the lab had a problem, it was my problem. And so I think when I talk to users and the administrative team, I do understand their problems. They don't always think you do, but eventually they, you know, it's like, so I think that was what always people gravitated to and why I succeeded here, was my understanding of the operations. And so when I say be close to your users, that's what they're gonna love, right? So if you're supporting the finance system, because you understand what their challenges are, they're gonna appreciate you more. Ray understands how that radiology department runs, they appreciate him more. Julian understands everything about that lab, they appreciate him more. So that's really the secret sauce. You can't just be the IT side, you gotta be both sides. Yes, Alan.
Well, okay, you've been in healthcare pretty much the whole career, and now you're going to stop, and you're probably not going to ignore it completely. So in the next few years, where in healthcare do you think you're going to be most surprised? That you're going to sort of say, wow, I didn't see that coming.
Well, hard to see what I can't see.
Right, that's why I said where and not what. What area do you think has the most capacity to surprise you?
Cars here.
Oh, good, you're rescued.
So our other surprise, we'll get back to, is on wheels, but it's not a car. So we got you a little cake.
Thank you. Okay, well, everybody's gonna have to eat this cake now.
That's all good.
Because you know, I believe in fitness. So you started with fitness, I know. I believe in fitness. I think that I want to live a long and healthy life, and I think you have to take care of your body to do that. So I want you all to be fit and healthy. Playing sports is a good idea. And so I think that what I hope for in healthcare, maybe more than anything, is that we would be surprised by eliminating some diseases. That would be the most wonderful thing to happen in healthcare. And so we've made slow progress in certain things, but a big surprise around that would be, I'd like to see that. And that's not where I work, so, you know, maybe some of these doctors are gonna come up with something that's, you know, extraordinary, and hopefully extends all our lives. Okay, we're gonna have cake?
Okay, well,
One more?
Yeah, I just have it's not really a question, but a comment. I'm not certain if you realize what, yes, every progress that you made in this institution and everything that have been told, but that was an instance that you represent like the savior of IT. And the reason that I mention this is a few of us went through tougher times. I'm not gonna mention names and things like that.
Please don't.
And,
Well,
so-
listen, guys, if you weren't here for outsourcing, you didn't live.
So, do you realize that was when you became a CEO, it was like and up to today, you stand to our expectation and take it.
Okay. I only hope that everybody realizes that, you know, and when they talk about the values of the hospital and the senior leadership talks about that, when you're in a job like this, you're a steward. And so my main job was to steward this department from where it was to where it is now. And it's a better department. I believe it. I hope you all believe it. Certainly Dr. Corwin believes it, and a lot of the leadership team. Doesn't mean you can't get a whole lot better than you are now, because there's still room to grow. But I thank you very much for that. That means the world to me.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna have cake? You got me to cry, Frank.
Oh, no, you know what, I'm silly, I forgot the forks.
Okay, somebody will get the forks. All right?
Anita has them.
So I really want to just thank everyone, you know, especially Aurelia, for spending your time and just, you know, kind of just being frank with us. And, you know, Raphael said it the best, you know, I think you know, you really steered our ship into the right path, and, you know, kind of gave us a lot of room to grow, and, you know, it's sky's the limit. So I think, you know, on behalf of everyone, we really, truly thank you.
Well, let me assure you, I thank all of you, because I'm not a success if you don't guys do what you all do, right? I'm just me. You're the department. So it's, you did it, and you did it, and you did it, and you did it. I just got in front and said, let's go. But you did it.
What about me?
You did it. of us go way back.
Who's the longest one here? Who's the,
Well, Pooch, you were here longer than me, Lou.
wow.
I,
34 years.
they called me the new kid, it was a riot.
But we'll definitely see you at the Christmas party.
Yep, you'll see me at the Christmas party. You had a chance to say bye. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, thanks for showing up, you know, it was,
Eat this cake, eat this cake.
yes, everyone gets a piece of cake.
Eat this cake.